Johnny, we're thrilled to have you here with us. You got a new title for this weekend, Co-Grand Marshal of the Food City 500.
Working on it. I'm really excited. This is going to be a great opportunity. I was here in 2014. Got to spend a little time with my Blue Emu people here who are based here. But the fact was that Richard Childress is a good friend of mine. I've worked with Richard Petty and Jeff Gordon and I were on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I'm a big fan of NASCAR. I've always have been. I admire the fact. The only problem I have is I have trouble getting in the car. You know, they don't make cars big enough for me for catchers who can't turn sideways. I was at Daytona and they said, "You want to take a lap around?" I said, "I'd love to." He said, "All right, crawl in the window." I said, "I'll just stay here in the pit," because I could not crawl in that window. I've never touched my toes in my life, and here I was catching for 17 years. So, any questions? Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed being here.
We got Claire B. Lang back here on the right.
Claire B. Lang. Great to have you here. Talk about what you've thought of fast cars. Do you have a particular driver, and what's the fastest you've driven? What about the sport of NASCAR?
Well, I've done the laps at Daytona, and unfortunately I didn't get to go around here. This would have been probably this has always been my dream racetrack. I mean, it's just the idea of 15 seconds around, for a lap and everything else, and to see the excitement in there. And I haven't been to very many tracks, but I'll tell you, I've been to Indy, I've been to Daytona, and I've really enjoyed the fact. But the conditioning, and I get caught up in the fact that I'd like to say team sport because so many people are involved in it. But the fact is that we've actually done some neurovisual studies on especially like the pit crew and how the changing of a tire, the changing, the unity of which they do. I say there is no I in team. I think it's all eyes, because you better have the best individual at each position. And these guys are amazing. I mean, the timing and the number of repetitions, as you all know more than I do, the repetition they have to do just to try to pick up that half second. And so I'm a big fan of I hate the guy that's in the front to lose. I mean, I don't know. It's just something about whether any sport, like I'll watch the Masters today, and I hate to see a Ferrari or if it's DeChambeau, or if there's somebody coming out of the pack. I think you get heartbroken for losing, because we lost 2 World Series before we won. And so it's just like, I don't want to say, this is my guy. Earnhardt, and my gosh, and Richard. Richard, if you meet the King, it's just, he's just one of a kind. You just fall in love with him when you meet him and everything else. But, you always have those reckless on-fire drivers that just go crazy and do stuff. So I've loved the sport forever. I've just, I never was one with a lead foot, I guess, more than anything. You had your hand up?
Go ahead, Jeff. And then we'll come over here to Zach.
Johnny, what was your first reaction when you heard about the Speedway Classic being played here at Bristol? And then the second question I got for you, what made those Big Red Machine teams so special?
Well, what I heard was because I've got a group of guys I call my breakfast bunch, and then I've got people from Cincinnati. So about 20 of us went out to the Field of Dreams out in Iowa to watch that. And then we're trying to figure out what could possibly be our next one. I've been a part of Hope for the Warriors for 20 years. It's a group and so when they started talking about building the field at Fort Bragg, I actually have a picture in my dining room that my friend took of how the Corps of Engineers built that ballpark at Fort Bragg. I think the Braves were the one that played there as well. So the idea is that they can bring baseball to a new era, a new group, a new gender, but also to a location. These are people in this. I grew up in the country. I grew up in a town of 600 people. We're diehard baseball fans. We're diehard sports fans. And to think that we can make it unique, I think baseball's really smart in order to bring baseball into a new type of thing where we make it new, we make it exciting. And so for me, that was the first thing I did was I heard about it, and next thing I know, next day I was on the phone getting tickets for the Motor Speedway, the Speedway Classic, August 2nd. So we're a group of us, about 20 again. We've already rented a house. We got 20 guys coming again, and I can't even tell you the number of guys that after they did it, Said, I didn't know this was on my bucket list. And part of it is the fact of the camaraderie of what it is. And I guess, again, your question about the Big Red Machine was, the thing was, wherever I go, people will say, I was a Reds fan, I was a Giant fan, I was a Dodger fan, I was a Cub fan. And then they will say, but we really admired and respected you. Because there were, and then they name the team. You know, they start, they start with Tony and Joe and Davey and Pete, and then they go George, Cesar, and Kenny, and they'll name the players on the field. Now, we left an impression, and that's what it's all about, is an impression of professionalism, of the fact that we played together. Now, Sparky would call us in a lot of times and ask us what I thought about getting Bill. We'd say no. What about Jack? Yes. Because we were a judge of talent. We were able to say, yes, this guy could fit in. And it's not necessarily in the starting lineup. I mean, it's hard to break that lineup, but it was guys that needed, like the Merv Redmonds and the Terry Crowleys and the Doug Flynn's and relief pitchers. We needed people in positions to make a difference when called upon. Bill Plummer was my backup catcher. He was ready every day if I wasn't playing. And so that was the thing about it. You know, and you talk about Pete, Joe, Tony, and myself, you're talking about four of the greatest players ever at their positions. And they proved it. And then George Foster hit 52 home runs. So I felt like we brought guys up to a higher level because we had a high standard. And if you have a high standard, you set it, and then everybody has to stay up with it. Because we didn't ask any special quarter. We said, I don't know, I got to have a private plane, I got to have my own room, I got to have a suite, I've got to have. No, we didn't ask for it, so they couldn't do it. So the idea was every day it was a labor of love of going out there and playing the game, and we did it back in those days about as good as you can.
All right, we got Zach over here, then we'll come back to Steve, and then Rod. Go ahead, Zach.
Zach
Sturdiello, NASCAR.com. Knowing that you were here in 2014, you've seen what the aura of this place is.
Oh, yeah.
And felt that. Knowing that this place is going to be hosting an MLB game, what atmosphere are you anticipating this place to bring to that sort of event?
Well, I'm going to ask Richard Petty if he'd make a couple laps around the infield just to make really get the excitement going and everything else. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than this race. I mean, when you get down to the last laps and all the things and I hope it's an atmosphere. I hope it's it all starts with the fact that you try to convince people to come to this event for the baseball game with one thing in mind: the uniqueness of it, the novelty of it. And yes, they can pull for the Reds, they can pull for the Braves, but they can hopefully pull for baseball. To think, okay, I mean, for my family today, I mean, my son, he's 15. He wants a Raptor 150 if anybody got one or knows a dealer that can get it. And it's 750 horsepower. He said, no, Dad, I don't speed. It's just there if you need it. Yeah, it's like, but it's when he got here, it was the excitement. I mean, he's never been he's a car fan, obviously, and understands it, but he's never really, but now to be here and be a part of it. Well, that's what I want, hopefully transcend into the game. It's just that people come and with, outside. I want the activities outside. I mean, that's going to set the tone as to what's going to be inside. We make it to where it is. We talk about the excitement, the fun of it. And if we can create a fun and atmosphere and almost like a parade atmosphere type of thing where, we're going to a party and let's show up with a good attitude and let's really enjoy the game.
All right, go to Steve, and then we'll come to Rod.
Steve Schweitzer with the Lasco Press. Jenny, when you look out there out the door today with all of those trucks parked in the infield here, what would you say to a fan with regard to how on earth are they going to put a baseball stadium in there?
Oh, we did. I mean, right now, that's why I came over here and I had them take a picture of this and what AI can do, of course, of trying to put that field. And they do it. I mean, my son's going to be a computer engineer, computer science engineer. He's starting to do that. But I think all the time about the capabilities that some of these guys are and their brains and the architecture. and seeing even clover leaves on the highway. I think about guys that do amazing things. You guys are wordsmiths. You guys know you have your brain cells holding hands, hopefully, when you really get down to it and doing what they do. So, I mean, to imagine what this is, I don't have any doubt in my mind that this won't come off as just one of the most pristine, one of the greatest looking fields. You would think that you're doing it. And I played in enough minor league, fields back in the day. I mean, it was, so now to think that this will be at another level. MLB wants to do this at another level. So they're committed to making this really happen to and at a major league type level. I mean, can you be Dodger Stadium? Can you be Wrigley Field? Can you be Fenway Park? No, but I mean, can you make an atmosphere of a one-of-a-kind thing? And it's going to be worth it almost. I've got my tickets already, just so you'll know. I started the day I heard about it. I used my, as my family sometimes says, it's good to be used sometimes, just to get in on the list. And so I'll guarantee you sometime, even though I'm going to be down inside, sometime I'm going to try to go up to the top of that stadium and look down. And I want the picture of that, even if I don't make it up there because I got AFib, and so I don't want to climb all those damn stairs anyway. But it's like I want to see it. I want to see it from the perspective of how brilliant it is and the fact that baseball is doing something like this.
All right, we'll go to Rod over here.
Johnny Rod Mullins with Augusta Free Press. The question I have for you is this. In your opinion, do you believe that the selection process to Cooperstown is more of a popularity contest, or is it based on career stats? And the reason why I'm saying that is because 2 Reds out of 5 that I was looking at on Reds.com are not in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, and that's Vada Pinson and also Dave Concepcion. What's your thoughts?
A little break in the action here. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's what the hell it is. I could use one right about now with that one in. I don't. All right. Here's the deal. You got to vote. You can vote Hall of Fame for race car driving. I mean, if it's the media, I mean, the guys who've covered the sports are making these decisions. I got 96.4%. Where in the hell were the other 3.6%? What did I do wrong? And Aller is acting like, but it is totally based on merit. Now, there's some writers new writers that came in and do this stuff, and they have a different opinion. What hurt a lot of players was the fact that they went from the National League to the American League after free agency. And so if you guys over here are American leaguers and these are National leaguers, you saw this guy play for all those years. He was a Hall of Famer. But he comes over here and the American League says, we saw him at the end of his career. He wasn't that good. So all of a sudden you're not voting. It is based on merit as fine. The only thing there's a popularity contest might be the Veterans Committee to some respect. But I've sat in on some of those veteran committees. And I mean, it is like Benihana of Tokyo. They'll chop you up in a heartbeat. And this guy, I always heard when I got up there that there were guys like Bob Fella and Robin Robertson, guys, and Frank Robinson that says, this isn't for the very good, this is for the great. And that's what hopefully they've tried to maintain. I think there were guys, I know there was guys back in the early days when the Veterans Committee would vote, and there were 10 or 11 guys, and they were all related, but they were good old boys, and everything else would say, hey, let's get old Bill a vote. And then wound up all 10 of them voted for him, and there was always some question. In fact, at one time, I think there were more in the Veterans Committee was voted in than by the election committee by the writers. So I don't, it's not a popularity contest, I can tell you that. But there will be writers who have a grudge against somebody. I mean, writers would never do that, would they? Not that I know of, but Ted Williams hit 406 the year that DiMaggio won the MVP, and the 2 Boston writers did not vote for him anywhere on the ballot. So that was an unpopular vote. As far as you can say, was it popular? No, it was very unpopular because they didn't do it. I think it's been really fair in so many aspects, and then baseball, the Hall of Fame tries to make sure that nobody got overlooked, and that's why they have. But Veda Pinson was my locker mate, as smooth and as glad and everything else, and then the next guy will come along and say, well, this guy's in. You know, would you have David Concepcion over Phil Rizzuto or Pee Wee Reese, or will you start comparing? And today there is so many analytics out there. And these guys they'll bombard these writers with information that they never would have thought. I mean, if you look at stats today, there are guys that were on the ballot the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. You could actually make a case that they were better than Tony Gwynn. I mean, so I guess it's just how you want to break down the analytics and how far you want to go with it to prove that they are more worthy than not. And I feel it's just, until there's a better way. But we'll have our favorites. You have a favorite. I have David Concepcion as a favorite. And when I was in the meeting, I talked about David Concepcion. Okay, and Ozzie Smith is sitting there. And I said, Ozzie, if you don't come into the league, Davey wins 10 Gold Gloves. Now he's in the Hall of Fame. But when you have Johnny Bench catching, Bill Plummer's not going to make the team. So, I mean, you wind up saying, well, if you look at it this way, he was this. If you look at it that way, so there's going to be guys that are overlooked. That's what the Hall of Fame has done, trying to have a different vote from the past. And they get it as right as they can get it. But I'm sure there's, people that say, I don't think he deserves it. We look at it, in one way from the other, and we wind up saying, no, I can't vote for him. And the other guy says, I definitely have to vote for him, because they see him in their mind of how he compared. But it's all a mental decision on all these great writers' ballots.
All right, really quick, let's close it out with just this. You say you're a fan of the sport. Who's your favorite driver? And you got a pick for the Food City 500?
Well, I mean, because Richard's Childers such a good friend of mine, I'd like to see Dylan win. But and just as he's won before. I mean, but it's like here. But I'd like to see Richard Petty win another race. Was that political or what? No, he's the king. King is it, and Earnhardt and all those guys with their hair on fire and everything else. And there's Danny Sullivan's a really good friend of mine, of course, and he was saying, you got to race aggressively, because we were just having fun with it, and I said you got to race aggressively, you got to be on the lead lap for the last 100 laps, and you got to stay damage free. Now, Danny and we were talking about the Formula One race they have down in Miami, and there's not a lot of parking because one of our friends their company is talking about being a sponsor. And so he said, yeah, but the racetrack is basically on the outside of the stadium, so they have problems with parking. So we went down to the Miami Open, the tennis tournament, the other day, and we pulled out, and instead of turning right, we went left. And hell, I was right there on the track. I was flying. I had the flag right in view, man. I was crossing the finish line and do it. So that's the closest I ever come to it. But you guys keep doing what you're doing, and I admire you and respect you guys for your motivation for what it is, and to be able to cover such a great sport that it is. And so, but thank you for my time.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Thank you for being here today.